Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Mexico and China seek to stem fentanyl's deadly cross-Pacific flow. Don't count on China's Belt and Road Initiative to disappear. We're in a new Cold War. It's time our politicians acted like it. The Xi-Putin meeting, a united front, but troubles on the horizon. China sends an envoy to the Middle East in a sign of its ambition to play a larger role. Mexico and China seek to stem fentanyl's deadly cross-Pacific flow. Bloomberg. Mexico is in talks with China to address the flow of fentanyl ingredients as the U.S. urges source countries to combat the opioid epidemic. Mexico is seeking to share intelligence on fentanyl shipments and its precursors across the Pacific. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration has stated that China is the primary source of fentanyl-related substances trafficked into the U.S. However, Washington's efforts to pressure Beijing have failed to stem the flow. The U.S. also accuses China of supplying precursor chemicals to Mexican cartels for fentanyl production. China has agreed to collaborate with Mexican authorities to identify illicitly traded chemicals. Don't count on China's Belt and Road Initiative to disappear. Diplomat. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, should not be judged solely on the amount of capital allocated to it but on the impact of the projects under its umbrella, according to Jonathan Hillman, senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Writing in The Diplomat, Hillman argued that the BRI has been successful in achieving China's strategic goals of securing economic ties with the rest of the world and of cementing trading partnerships with countries keen to avoid taking sides in the China-US rivalry. Hillman also suggested that the second decade of the BRI will focus more on the digital Silk Road and green energy projects. We're in a new Cold War. It's time our politicians acted like it. Telegraph. The Heritage Foundation is calling on U.S. politicians to take stronger action against China rather than relying on dialogue and diplomacy. The think tank suggests that China's strategy of using dialogue to extract concessions from Washington is working, and that the Biden administration has been too slow to act against the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. The Heritage Foundation is urging conservatives in Congress to ban TikTok, restrict Chinese technology, expel CCP agents from U.S. education, and hold China accountable for its role in the COVID-19 pandemic. The Xi-Putin meeting, a united front, but troubles on the horizon. Diplomat. China's assertion of its superiority in the clean energy sector during a recent meeting with Russia is a negotiating tactic aimed at showing Moscow that China has a strong position in discussions over the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, according to Jonathan Elkind, a senior research scholar at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University. Russia's lack of a renewable energy industry means China's development of domestic clean energy resources could pose a risk to its hydrocarbon exports to its northern neighbor in the medium and long term. China sends an envoy to the Middle East in a sign of its ambition to play a larger role. The Toronto Star. China has sent an envoy to the Middle East to push for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, signaling its ambitions to play a larger role in the region. China opposes attacks on civilians but has not condemned the initial Hamas attack that started the latest war. Instead, it has called for an immediate ceasefire to protect civilians. China wants to position itself as a mediator and exert its influence in the region as the U.S. shifts its global attention elsewhere. Egyptian Prime Minister Mostafa Madbouly has expressed appreciation for China's position on the Palestinian question and expects China to play a bigger role in solving the current crisis. U.S. says China likely to have 1,000 nuclear warheads. The Independent. China has rejected a Pentagon report that claims the country has over 500 operational nuclear warheads and will likely have over 1,000 by 2030. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson stated that the report is filled with prejudice and distorts facts and that China has no intention of engaging in a nuclear arms race. The Pentagon report also stated that China's Navy has more than 370 ships and submarines, and expressed concern about pressure from Beijing on Taiwan. Relations between China and the U.S. have been tense, but the Pentagon recently accepted an invitation to attend China's top annual security forum, indicating potential warming ties. U.S. must hold on to its One China policy, Joseph Nye says. Nikkei Asia. China's economic slowdown does not provide an opportunity for the U.S. to change its One China policy, which recognizes Taiwan as part of China, according to Joseph Nye, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense. Speaking at a security symposium organized by Nikkei and the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Nye warned that recognizing two Chinas could provoke Chinese President Xi Jinping. Nye stressed that the U.S. and China had agreed to the One China policy and said that deterrence was needed to prevent Taipei from seeking independence and Beijing from using force. Chinese Communist Party's diplomatic arm in candid meeting with U.S. think tank. South China Morning Post. China's Communist Party's International Liaison Department held an online meeting with the American think tank the Asia Society, marking a potential thawing in bilateral ties between the two countries. The meeting focused on improving communication and cooperation, and managing conflicts and differences between the two nations. This comes as more Chinese agencies reach out to U.S. groups, and follows a meeting between the head of the International Liaison Department and a U.S. envoy in April. China's Xi tells Vietnam not to forget roots of their friendship. Reuters. Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of the original intention of China and Vietnam's traditional friendship during a meeting with Vietnamese President Vo Van Thuong. China and the United States have been competing for influence in Southeast Asia, and Vietnam recently elevated its ties with the U.S. to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Despite a brief war in 1979, China and Vietnam have traditionally strong ties, and Xi stressed the need for joint consultation and cooperation between the two countries. There had been speculation about a possible visit by Xi to Hanoi, but no official announcement has been made. Putin visits Southern Army headquarters after China trip. Bloomberg. Russian President Vladimir Putin has visited the headquarters of the country's southern military district near the Ukrainian border. He was reportedly briefed on the situation in Ukraine by Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov. The visit came after reports that Ukrainian forces had crossed the Dnipro River and advanced into Russian-occupied territory. The Russian Defense Ministry said Russian forces had thwarted sabotage and reconnaissance activity in the area. Putin last visited the area in August following a mutiny by Yevgeny Prigozhin, who led Wagner mercenaries from Rostov-on-Don in an unsuccessful bid to oust Gerasimov and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the six-dimensional world. Today, I bring you a roundup of some interesting news stories from around the world. First, we have the efforts of Mexico and China to address the flow of fentanyl ingredients. As the U.S. battles the opioid epidemic, Mexico is seeking to share intelligence with China to crack down on the trafficking of fentanyl substances. However, despite the U.S. pressuring Beijing, the flow of fentanyl from China has not been stemmed. It's a challenging situation, but hopefully, this collaboration between Mexico and China will yield positive results. Next, we turn to China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. While some may question the success of the BRI based solely on the amount of capital allocated to it, Jonathan Hillman argues that we should look at the impact of the projects under its umbrella. The BRI has helped China secure economic ties and trading partnerships around the world. As we enter the second decade of the BRI, we can expect a focus on the Digital Silk Road and green energy projects. So, let's see what new developments these will bring. Moving on, we have the Heritage Foundation calling for stronger action against China from U.S. politicians. They argue that relying solely on dialogue and diplomacy is not enough. The foundation urges conservatives in Congress to take measures such as banning TikTok, restricting Chinese technology, and expelling CCP agents from U.S. education. It's clear that tensions between the U.S. and China are high, and the foundation believes it's time for stronger action. In another interesting development, China has sent an envoy to the Middle East to push for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. This move signals China's ambition to play a larger role in the region and position itself as a mediator. As the U.S. shifts its global attention elsewhere, China sees an opportunity to exert its influence. It remains to be seen how effective China's efforts will be in resolving the current crisis. Now, let's talk about nuclear weapons. The U.S. recently claimed that China is likely to have 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030. However, China has rejected this report, stating that it has no intention of engaging in a nuclear arms race. Tensions between the U.S. and China are always a cause for concern, but it's also worth noting that the Pentagon has accepted an invitation to attend China's top annual security forum. Perhaps this indicates a potential warming of ties. Finally, we have Joseph Nye cautioning against any change to the U.S. One China policy. Nye believes that recognizing two Chinas could provoke Chinese President Xi Jinping and lead to further tensions. It's a delicate balance, and Nye emphasizes the need for deterrence to prevent any escalation of conflicts between China and Taiwan. That's all for today's news roundup. As always, I encourage you to share your thoughts and join the discussion. What are your views on these developments? Do you have any questions? Let's hear what you have to say. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.